Welcome back. For our top domestic story this hour, we look to the West Coast, where the worst fires in California history are proving to be some of the deadliest. More bodies have been discovered in Northern California's Camp Fire. The death toll there now reaching 56. Down south, just outside of Los Angeles, another body was found inside a burned down home from the Woolsey fire, which claimed a total of 3 lives. As more than 100 remain missing, there's another dangerous threat posed by the fires getting overlooked. RT's Natasha Sweatte is at the Susana Field Lab just outside of Los Angeles with more.
This massive nuclear dump site just up the hill borders Los Angeles and Ventura counties. And what you may not know is that several horrific accidents involving nuclear waste happened here, including one of the worst meltdowns on record. And after the Woolsey fire burned land here, a group of doctors say they're concerned. The Woolsey fire has engulfed more than 98,000 acres, and part of it was right here at the Santa Susana Field Lab. Here you can see exactly where the fire touched the facility. And now, while the Santa Susana Field Lab is closed down, the government and private companies have been testing various nuclear experiments here since the 1940s. And the toxic waste has been building up. As more than 500,000 people live within 10 miles of the facility, physicians for social responsibility say they're concerned. Robert Dodge, president of the group, said in a statement that, quote, toxic materials are at the Santa Susana Field Lab soil and vegetation, and when it burns and becomes airborne in smoke and ash, there's a real possibility of heightened exposure for area residents. And others say this looks and smells all too familiar, similar to a 1959 accident that released 459 times more radiation in the 3 Mile accident back in 1979.
4 of those reactors that we know of failed, had major accidents. The most major was the sodium-cooled reactor, which had a tremendous accident, which is we know very little about, besides the fact it was a tremendous accident that gave off more radiation than 3 Mile Island did.
The California Department of Toxic Substances Control said in a statement that there was nothing to worry about in terms of the Santa Susana site in relation to the Woolsey fire. In a statement, they said their scientists and toxicologists do not believe the fire has caused any releases of hazardous materials that would pose a risk to people exposed to the smoke. So now, as residents are slowly being allowed back into their homes, even with the fires dying down, some say that they're still worried it's a dangerous place to be. In Woolsey Canyon, Natasha Sweatte, RT.
With nuclear safety in question, we're joined now by Cindy Folkers. She's a radiation and health hazard specialist with Beyond Nuclear. Welcome to the show, Cindy. As Natasha mentioned, the California Department of Toxic Substances Control said there's nothing to worry about here. Do you agree? And if not, why would the government play down a potential risk?
I actually do not think that there is enough evidence yet to say one way or the other. And part of the reason is because we don't really know who is measuring, how they're measuring. They're not releasing any of this information to the public currently, although the public certainly around the area has asked that it be released, in addition to Physicians for Social Responsibility asking that this information be released. So we need to know, because it's very tricky measuring radiation, especially under these conditions. So we need to know what they're measuring, what equipment they're using, and it's just, we don't have enough information. And when the agency says that they believe that there is not a danger here, belief isn't enough with this technology anymore, and belief isn't enough with this agency and how they have treated the community around the Santa Susana facility.
How are they able to keep such a extreme public health risk under such wraps?
Well, part of it is that when you have lower doses of radioactivity, which is probably what we would experience at the Santa Susana site and in the suburbs around it, you get these low doses give you longer-term health impacts. So you will see increases, as they have, of childhood cancers, of other kinds of cancers in the suburban areas around this facility, which has been closed for a number of years now. We know that this facility had on its site strontium-90, cesium-137, plutonium, among other things. And so when you have doses that are this low, you don't see the health impacts as you would with higher doses, but it is still very detrimental to the local communities.
And can you explain more precisely what effect radiation has on the human body and what kind of impact an accident at this kind of site would have?
Sure. So in general, the radiation can affect you from the outside. If you're exposed to it outside your body, you can inhale it or ingest it, and the nuclides can go to your body in places where your body thinks it can use it as a nutrient, and in fact, it's radioactive instead. And it can stay in your body for a very long time, depending on the chemical that it's mimicking inside your body, years, decades, a whole lifetime, and it can irradiate you from within, causing all sorts of diseases, not just cancer. When you're looking at the Susana site, again, there were people around there who have seen increases in childhood cancers. And think about how this community is looking at this. They've been asking for that site to be cleaned up for decades now, and it hasn't happened. And as a result, this fire, the Woolsey fire, which we know has burned the Santa Susana site, can be spreading any radioactive contamination that was in the soil, in any of the vegetation. It can create radioactive smoke. It can release it through the smoke and the fire and the updrafts from the fire, and it can be traveling any number of miles. I mean, when this happened at Fukushima, when the reactor first exploded, we did get particulate matter from there on the West Coast. So if you look at what's going on, for instance, at the Chernobyl site, we've had wildfires have been a tremendous concern at that site for a number of years now, and they've had several, and it resuspends whatever contamination happens to be in the environment can be resuspended in a case like that.
It's just absolutely terrifying when you really explain what could possibly happen here or what could already be happening. How would you even begin to clear up a site like this, and what does all of this tell us about the prospects of so-called sustainable nuclear energy?
Well, so when you have a contaminated site like this, there are certain things that you can do, but we really still are novices at figuring out how to contain it within the environment. We're seeing at Chernobyl, Fukushima, and now Santa Susana that this stuff will spread. It will spread based on weather patterns, rain, in the case of Fukushima, snow and snow melt. There are a whole bunch of issues here. And so it makes it really difficult to contain it, and we don't really have a very good handle on how to do that in the environment yet. And this is one of the reasons, although not the only reason, that nuclear power is not sustainable. I would point out that these forest fires and the wildfires that are happening in California are, at least in part, we believe, due to climate change. Well, if climate change is going to increase the amount of fires that we have that can release the radioactivity and other contaminants from these toxic sites, then we are going to have to seriously consider not having nuclear power. I mean, nuclear power in general is not cheap enough. They're not going to be able to be built in time to help address climate change. And now we've got the spread of the radioactive contamination due to climate change factors, in addition to the other concerns, valid concerns, about using nuclear power, for instance, to address climate change.
It's totally horrific. We hope that at least we'll get some answers out of California soon as to this Susana site. Cindy Folklers, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.